The transport ship dropped out of hyperspace with a soft hum and pressed his face against the observation window like a child seeing snow for the first time. Station Helix 7 floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure of metal and light that stretched for kilometers in every direction. It was the home of the Galactic Military Academy, the most famous training facility in the known universe. For 300 years, this station had produced the finest soldiers from over 40 different species, warriors who could fight in any environment, survive any condition, and defeat any enemy. The graduation ceremony was watched by billions across the galaxy. The washout rate was 73%. Smiled and adjusted the small bag on his shoulder. He had packed light, just some clothes, a few books, and a photograph of his grandmother that he kept in his pocket at all times. He was the first human to ever attend this academy. When the Terran Confederation finally gained admission to the Galactic Coalition last year, they were given one spot at the academy, one chance to prove that humans belonged among the stars. The Coalition expected the humans to send their strongest warrior, their most brilliant tactician, or their most decorated soldier. Instead, they sent a 26-year-old man from a small town in Korea who had spent most of his life helping his grandmother run a restaurant. The docking bay was enormous. Stepped off the transport and immediately felt the eyes of 100 different beings turned toward him. Some had scales, some had fur, some had bodies made of crystal or metal or something he could not even name. They all looked at him with the same expression: curiosity and perhaps a little pity. A massive creature approached him. It stood over 2 meters tall, with 4 arms, compound eyes, and mandibles that clicked when it spoke. Its translator device turned the clicks into words that could understand. "You are the Terran," the creature said. It was not a question. "Yes, sir," replied with a polite bow, "reporting for training." The creature's mandibles clicked faster. Was not sure, but he thought it might be laughing. "I am Commander Ra," the said. "I am in charge of your training unit. Follow me." They walked through long corridors filled with cadets from dozens of species. Noticed that many of them stopped to stare at him. He heard whispers in languages his translator could not process, but the tone was clear enough. They were talking about him, about how small he was, about how soft he looked, about how long he would last. Commander Ra led him to a large room where 3 other beings waited. They were his new teammates, his training unit for the next 2 years. The first was, he looked like a dinosaur that had learned to walk upright and wear clothes. His scales were dark green, and his claws looked sharp enough to cut through metal. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rumbling. "So this is the human," said, looking up and down. "I expected something more." The second was, his body was made entirely of crystal, beautiful and strange. Light passed through him and created rainbows on the walls. He did not need to breathe and could survive in the vacuum of space without any protection. "Interesting," said, his voice like wind chimes. "I have read about Terrans. Your species is quite new to space travel." The third was, she had 4 arms, blue skin, and muscles that bulged beneath her uniform. Her species was famous for producing warriors, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. "The Terran will slow us down," said bluntly. "Our unit's scores will suffer because of him." Just smiled and bowed to each of them in turn. "It is nice to meet all of you. I hope we can work well together." Commander Ra handed a data pad with his schedule and room assignment. "Training begins tomorrow at 0600. Do not be late. The Academy does not accept excuses." After the commander left, looked at his new teammates. They were still staring at him like he was some kind of exotic animal in a zoo. "I have a question," said. "Where is the mess hall? I am very hungry." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "The mess hall is on level 4. But I warn you, Terran, the food here is not made for your species. You may find it challenging." His eyes lit up. Challenging food, that sounds exciting. In my, we have a dish called, it is chicken covered in so much spicy sauce that it makes you cry. My grandmother made the best in the whole province. I miss it very much. The three aliens exchanged confused looks. Why was this human talking about food that made him cry as if it was a good thing? Found the mess hall and discovered that the food was indeed strange. There were purple vegetables that tasted like metal, meat from animals he had never heard of, and a drink that was slightly radioactive. He ate everything on his tray, thanked the kitchen staff, and went back for seconds. That night, lying in his small room, looked at the photograph of his grandmother. She had raised him after his parents died in a factory accident when he was 7. She had taught him how to cook, how to work hard, and how to never give up no matter how difficult things became. "I will make you proud, grandmother," he whispered to the photograph. "I will not quit." The next morning, training began. The first exercise was a simple physical test. The cadets had to run around the training field 10 times. For most species, this was easy. They were built for speed. They had incredible endurance. Even the crystalline could move faster than they appeared. Finished last. He was not even close. By the time he crossed the finish line, the other cadets had already started the next exercise. His lungs burned. His legs felt like jelly. Sweat poured down his face. Commander Ra looked at his time and clicked his mandibles. "Disappointing," he said, "but not surprising." The next test was strength. The cadets had to lift heavy weights above their heads, lifted 300 kilograms with ease, lifted even more with her 4 arms. Despite being made of crystal, had a surprising amount of power in his body. Lifted the minimum required weight. His arms shook, his face turned red, but he did it. "Barely acceptable," Commander Ra noted. The pattern continued for the rest of the day. Speed tests, endurance tests, combat simulations. In every single category came in last place. He was slower, weaker, and less durable than every other species at the academy. By the end of the first week, his teammates had stopped expecting anything from him. They worked around him, planned for his limitations, and accepted that he would always be the weak link in their unit. But they noticed something strange. No matter how badly performed, no matter how tired he became, no matter how much pain he was clearly in, he never complained. He never asked for a break. He never made excuses. He just kept going. On the 7th day, after another grueling training session, approached in the barracks. "Human," they said, his voice carrying a hint of genuine curiosity. "Why do you continue? You must know that you cannot compete with us. You will never catch up. Why do you not simply go home?" Looked up from the book he was reading. It was a Korean novel about a farmer who climbed a mountain. "My grandmother used to say something," replied. "She said that the strongest people are not the ones who never fall. They are the ones who fall and get back up, again and again, until there is no more getting up to do." Did not understand. But what is the point of getting up if you will only fall again? Smiled. That is the only way to reach the top of the mountain. The walked away, shaking his head. Terrans were strange creatures. But as the weeks passed, that strangeness began to take on a different meaning. Commander Ra made a note in his file after the first month of training. It said simply, "Investigate Terran persistence. Something is different about this one." He had no idea how right he was. The Galactic Military Academy was famous for breaking cadets. That was its purpose. Take the strongest warriors from across the galaxy, push them past their limits, and see which ones could survive. The training was brutal. The instructors were merciless, and the tests were designed to find every weakness. For every day was a new lesson in failure. The morning started at 0600 with physical conditioning. The cadets ran obstacle courses that included climbing walls covered in sharp edges, swimming through pools of ice-cold water, and crawling under barriers that released mild electrical shocks. Finished last every time. His hands bled from the sharp edges. His body shook from the cold water. His muscles spasmed from the shocks. But he finished. The Terran is still alive, observed one morning as collapsed across the finish line, gasping for air. I did not expect him to last this long. He is stubborn, agreed, watching the human struggle to stand up. Stupid but stubborn. The crystalline said nothing. He had been observing the human more closely than the others. There was something in the Terran's eyes that interested him, something that did not make sense. After physical conditioning came tactical training. The cadets studied military history, battle strategies, and command techniques. Here, at least, was not last. His mind was sharp, and he had spent years reading books about war and strategy. He was not the best, but he was competent. The afternoon brought combat simulations, virtual reality chambers that placed the cadets in realistic battle scenarios. They had to fight, survive, and complete objectives while facing simulated enemies. Died a lot in these simulations. His reflexes were slower than the other species. His strength was limited. He could not see in the dark like could not survive in toxic environments like and could not overpower enemies with multiple arms like But the instructors noticed something strange about his performance. Every time died in a simulation, he came back and did slightly better. He learned from his mistakes. He adapted. He found creative solutions that none of the other cadets had thought of. In one simulation, his entire team was trapped in a burning building with enemies blocking all exits. Wanted to fight through. Wanted to find another way out. Calculated that their chances of survival were less than 12%. Looked at the fire, then looked at his teammates. The fire, he said simply, we use the fire. He grabbed a piece of burning debris and threw it at the ammunition storage near the enemy position. The explosion killed all the enemies and opened a path to escape. It also killed in the simulation, but his teammates survived and completed the objective. The Terran sacrificed himself for the team, Commander Ron noted in his report. Unusual behavior. Most species prioritize self-preservation. The biggest test came at the end of the second month, the Endurance March. It was a legendary trial at the Academy. Cadets had to march across a harsh desert environment for 40 hours without rest. They carried full combat gear. The temperature changed from burning hot during the day to freezing cold at night. There was no food provided and only limited water. Many cadets failed this test. Some collapsed from exhaustion. Others gave up and called for extraction. The average completion rate was around 60%. Training Unit Sigma 12 started the march at dawn. Took the lead, his powerful legs eating up the distance. Followed close behind, her 4 arms helping her balance over rough terrain. Moved steadily, his crystal body reflecting the harsh sunlight. Walked at the back of the group. Within the first 3 hours, he had fallen behind. Leave him, said when suggested waiting. He will slow us down. Our team's score matters. Hesitated. He did not like the human, but something felt wrong about leaving him alone in the desert. I will be fine, called out, his voice already tired. Keep going, I will catch up. They left him behind. Hour 10. The sun was at its peak. The heat was unbearable for most species. Scales were drying out. Blue skin was turning pale. Even who did not feel temperature the way organic beings did was moving slower. Was nowhere to be seen. The human is probably dead, said. The heat would destroy his fragile body. But when they checked the tracking system, they saw that was still moving. Slowly, very slowly, but moving. Hour 20. Night had fallen. The temperature dropped below freezing. The cadets huddled together for warmth, taking short breaks before pushing forward. They were exhausted. Their bodies were screaming for rest. According to the tracker, was still moving. Hour 31 collapsed. The mighty fell to his knees, his powerful body finally giving out. His muscles had simply stopped working. He had pushed himself beyond his limits, and now he was paying the price. "I cannot continue," admitted, his voice filled with shame. "My body, it will not obey." And stopped to help him. They tried to carry him, but it slowed them down too much. Their own bodies were failing. "We should call for extraction," said, his crystalline voice weak. "There is no shame in recognizing our limits." Before they could make the call, they heard footsteps behind them. It was. He looked terrible. His feet were bleeding through his boots. His skin was burned from the sun and cracked from the cold. He was shaking with every step. His eyes were unfocused, as if he was not entirely aware of where he was. But he was still walking. Said, staring at the human with wide eyes, How are you still moving?" Blinked slowly. It took him a moment to recognize his teammate. "Oh, hello," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you taking a break? That is a good idea. Breaks are important." He kept walking. He walked right past them, one foot in front of the other, his body moving on pure automatic pilot. His mind had stopped thinking about pain hours ago. His legs had stopped feeling anything at all. He was just a machine now, programmed to move forward. Watched him go, something changing in his eyes. "Get up," said to himself. He grabbed the ground and forced himself to stand. "If the human can continue, I can continue." Stared at the disappearing figure of. She had 4 arms, stronger muscles, and a warrior's heritage that went back 10,000 years. And this soft, fragile human was still walking while she wanted to quit. "I am not going to be shown up by a Terran," she growled, pushing herself forward. Said nothing, but he moved. Hour 35. His crystalline structure began to fracture. The extreme temperature changes had stressed his body beyond its design limits. Cracks appeared along his arms and legs. Every step caused small pieces of himself to chip away. It was agony. Losing pieces of their body was like losing pieces of their soul. Wanted to stop. He needed to stop. His survival instincts were screaming at him to call for help before he shattered completely. But ahead of him, somehow still visible in the darkness, was the human. Still walking. Kept moving. Hour 39. The finish line appeared in the distance. Commander Ra stood waiting, along with a team of medical personnel. He watched through his compound eyes as the 4 figures approached. Crossed first, his body covered in cracks, pieces of crystal falling with every step. The medical team rushed to stabilize him. Came second, her 4 arms hanging limp, her legs moving through pure willpower. Came third, crawling the last 100 meters on his hands and knees. And then, almost an hour later, came. He crossed the finish line and immediately collapsed. The medical team surrounded him, checking his vital signs. His feet were destroyed. His muscles were torn. His body temperature was dangerously low. By all medical logic, he should have stopped walking 20 hours ago. When he woke up in the medical bay, Commander Ra was standing beside his bed. "Cadet," the commander said, his mandibles clicking slowly. "You finished last. Your time was the worst in Academy history for any species." Nodded weakly. "I am sorry, Commander. I will try to do better next time." Commander Ra leaned closer. "How did you continue? Our sensors showed that your pain levels exceeded what should be physically possible. You should have collapsed. You should have died." Was quiet for a moment, thinking about the question. "Commander," he finally said, "have you ever worked a double shift in a Korean restaurant during the holiday season?" The commander had not. "My grandmother owned a restaurant," continued. "During the holidays, we would work from 5 in the morning until midnight. No breaks, no rest, customers always coming, food always cooking. Your feet hurt, your back hurts, everything hurts, but you cannot stop because people are depending on you." He looked at the ceiling, remembering those long days. Compared to that, walking in a desert for 40 hours was not so bad. At least there were no customers complaining about the soup being too cold. Commander Ross stared at the human for a long moment. Then he made a note in his data pad. The note said, "Schedule pain threshold examination for the Terran. Something is very wrong with this species." He had no idea how right he was. The neural stress assessment chamber was located deep in the medical wing of Station Helix 7. It was a cold, sterile room with white walls and harsh lighting. In the center sat a single chair, covered in sensors and connected to a massive computer system. This was the most feared test at the Galactic Military Academy. Every cadet had to take this test. It was not optional. Doctor slithered into the room, her serpentine body moving smoothly across the floor. She was a species known for their scientific minds and complete lack of emotion. In her 10,000 examinations, she had never shown surprise, fear, or excitement. She simply collected data. Today, she would collect data on the Terran. Training Unit Sigma 12 waited outside the chamber. They would be tested one at a time, in order of expected performance. The neural stress assessment measured pain tolerance, a critical factor in determining military assignments. Those with low tolerance worked in support roles. Those with high tolerance became frontline soldiers. Went first. The warrior sat in the chair, her forearms strapped to the armrests, sensors attached to her blue skin. Doctor activated the machine. The neural stress assessment did not cause physical damage. It stimulated pain receptors directly, making the brain believe the body was being hurt. Level 1 felt like a small burn. Level 10 felt like having every bone broken at once. Doctor started at Level 1. Showed no reaction. Level 3, still nothing. Level 5, jaw tightened. Level 6, her hands gripped the armrests. Level 7, she was breathing hard now, her muscles tense, sweat forming on her forehead. Level 7.2, raised her hand, signaling for the test to stop. Threshold level 7.2, doctor recorded in her emotionless voice. Above average for species, recommended for frontline combat duty. Left the chamber, rubbing her temples. Her head hurt. The pain had been intense, more than anything she had experienced in real combat. She was proud of her score, but she was glad it was over. Went next. The crystalline had a different relationship with pain than organic species. His body did not have nerves in the traditional sense. Instead, he felt stress as a kind of vibration, a wrongness that echoed through his crystal structure. Doctor calibrated the machine for physiology and began. Made it to level 6.8 before signaling for the test to stop. His crystal body was humming with stress, tiny fractures forming along his surface. Threshold level 6.8, doctor recorded, average for species. Went third. The sat in the chair with confidence. His species was known for high pain tolerance. Their scales provided natural armor, and their reptilian brains processed pain differently than mammals. Level 5, nothing. Level 6, still nothing. Level 7, claws dug into the armrests, leaving marks in the metal. Level 8, he was growling now, a low, dangerous sound. Level 8.1, raised his hand. Threshold level 8.1, doctor recorded. Exceptional for species, recommended for special operations consideration. Left the chamber with pride. His score was the highest of the group, the highest doctor had seen in months. Now it was turn. The human walked into the chamber with his usual calm smile. He looked around at the equipment with curiosity, like a tourist visiting a new city. "Please sit in the chair," doctor said. Sat. The sensors were attached to his skin. The restraints were fastened around his arms. Doctor noticed that his heart rate was completely normal. Most cadets showed elevated stress before the test even began. "The examination will now begin," doctor announced. "Signal with your hand when you reach your limit." "Understood," said politely. "Thank you for explaining." Doctor activated the machine at level 1. No response from the human. She checked the equipment. Everything was working correctly. Level 2. Still nothing. Was looking around the room, seemingly bored. Level 3. This was the equivalent of having a bone broken. Blinked. Doctor felt something she had not felt in decades. Confusion. Level 4. Level 5. The human shifted slightly in his seat, adjusting his position as if he was uncomfortable in a movie theater. "Is the machine working?" asked politely. "I felt a small tingle. Are we starting now?" Doctor checked the equipment again. Everything was functioning perfectly. The human's brain should be receiving signals of intense, overwhelming pain. His heart rate should be elevated. His stress hormones should be flooding his system. Instead, his vital signs showed mild discomfort, like he had stubbed his toe. Level 6. His eyebrows raised slightly. "Oh, I can feel something now." Level 7. This was where most species started screaming. The human's jaw tightened. He took a slow breath. His hands gripped the armrests. But he did not signal for the test to stop. Level 8. The level that had broken the strongest member of the unit. Closed his eyes. His face was tense. A vein appeared on his forehead. Sweat began to form on his skin. He did not signal. Level 9. Doctor had only seen 3 cadets in her entire career reach level 9. The human was trembling now. His entire body was shaking. His teeth were clenched so hard that she could hear them grinding. Every muscle was tight. He did not signal. Level 10. This was the maximum setting. It was reserved for theoretical testing only. Doctor had never used it on a living being. It was considered inhumane by galactic convention. But the human had not signaled. The rules said she had to continue until he did. His back arched against the chair. A strangled sound escaped his throat. His eyes were squeezed shut. Tears leaked from the corners of his eyes. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes. 3 minutes. "That," said through gritted teeth, his voice barely recognizable, "is uncomfortable." He did not signal for the test to stop. Doctor terminated the examination manually. She had never done that before. In 10,000 examinations, she had always waited for the subject to signal their limit. But something about watching this human endure level 10 for 3 minutes had disturbed her on a fundamental level. The machine powered down. The sensors were removed. Sat in the chair, breathing heavily, his body slowly relaxing. "Is it over?" he asked weakly. "I could have continued. Was my score okay?" Doctor stared at him. "Your score," she said slowly, "is beyond my ability to measure. You exceeded the maximum setting of the equipment." Outside the chamber and watched through the observation window, they had seen everything. They had watched their teammate, the weak human who finished last in every physical test, sit at level 10 for 3 minutes without signaling his limit. "That is not possible," said. "Level 10 would kill a, it would shatter a. How is the human still conscious?" Had no answer. She was staring at the human with new eyes, the same human she had dismissed as weak, fragile, and useless. Spoke for the first time. "I believe we have misunderstood the Terran species." That evening, Doctor submitted her report to Commander Ra. She requested permission to conduct additional research on Terran pain response. She also requested that the Academy's medical database be updated with new information. The Terran subject experienced pain equivalent to catastrophic physical trauma, her report stated. His nervous system received and processed signals of maximum intensity. Unlike other species, however, the pain did not trigger an automatic surrender response. The subject remained conscious, aware, and in control of his faculties throughout the examination. She added a note at the bottom of the report. Recommendation: do not allow Terrans to become enemies of the Galactic Coalition. Their relationship with pain appears to be fundamentally different from all known species. Further study required. Commander Ra read the report 3 times. Then he contacted the Academy Council and requested an emergency meeting. In his quarters, sat on his bed, looking at the photograph of his grandmother. His body still hurt. The phantom pain from the test lingered in his muscles and bones, a memory that would take days to fade. He thought about the question Doctor had asked after the test. Why had he not signaled for it to stop? The answer was simple, really. He had grown up in pain. As a child, he had chronic headaches that the doctors could not explain. As a teenager, he had worked in his grandmother's restaurant, carrying heavy pots, standing for 16 hours at a time, burning his hands on hot stoves. His body had learned to live with pain the way fish learn to live in water. Pain was not something to be avoided. It was not a signal to stop. It was just information, a message from the body that said, something is happening. What you did with that information was your choice. Chose to keep going. His grandmother used to tell him a story about a mountain. At the top of the mountain was a beautiful temple where anyone who reached it could find peace. But the path to the temple was covered in sharp rocks. Every step caused pain. Many people started the journey, but most turned back. The rocks do not care if you are in pain, his grandmother would say. The mountain does not care if you cry. Only you can decide if the temple is worth the journey. Had decided a long time ago. The temple was always worth the journey. He put the photograph away and lay down to sleep. Tomorrow there would be more training, more tests, more pain. He could not wait. The Academy Council Chamber was the most important room on Station Helix 7. It was where the leaders of the Galactic Military Academy made decisions that affected soldiers across the entire coalition. 20 council members sat in a circle, representing 20 different species. They had been summoned for an emergency meeting. Commander Ra stood in the center of the circle. Next to him was Doctor, her serpentine body coiled neatly, holding a data pad with her research. Council members, Commander Ra began, his mandibles clicking slowly. We have discovered something about the Terran species that requires immediate attention. The council members shifted in their seats. Many of them had heard rumors about the human cadet who had broken the pain threshold equipment. Some believed the stories. Others thought they were exaggerated. Doctor, Commander Ra said, please present your findings. The scientist slithered forward, activating a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. As you know, I administered the neural stress assessment to Cadet of Earth 3 days ago, she began. The results were unlike anything in our 10,000 examination database. The holographic display showed the test recordings. The council watched as the human sat calmly through levels that made other species scream. They watched him endure the maximum setting without signaling his limit. Murmurs spread through the chamber. I initially believed the equipment had malfunctioned, Doctor continued. It had not. The Terran's nervous system received and processed pain signals at maximum intensity. He simply did not stop. She changed the display to show biological data about the human species. To understand why, we must understand where Terrans come from. The display showed a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star, Earth, the human. This planet is classified in our databases as a Class 7 world, Doctor explained. We typically call such worlds death worlds. They are considered unsuitable for intelligent life. A council member from the species raised a crystalline hand. Class 7, that is the same rating as the prison planet. How did intelligent life evolve there? An excellent question, Doctor replied. Earth has several characteristics that should have prevented the development of civilization. The display changed to show Earth statistics. First, temperature variance. Earth's surface temperature ranges from -89 degrees to +56 degrees. depending on location and season. Most species can only survive in a narrow temperature range. Terrans evolved to tolerate extreme heat and extreme cold. The council members looked uncomfortable. The temperature numbers were staggering. Second, predators. Earth's history is filled with creatures designed to kill Terrans. Large carnivores with sharp teeth, venomous insects and reptiles, microscopic organisms that invade the body and cause disease. Terrans did not evolve at the top of their food chain. They had to fight for survival every single day. The display showed images of Earth animals: lions, sharks, crocodiles, mosquitoes, viruses. Third, gravity. Earth's gravity is higher than the galactic average. Every moment of every day, Terrans carry extra weight on their bones and muscles. This constant stress made them stronger, but it also means they experience chronic pain simply from existing. Doctor paused, letting the information sink in. Fourth, and perhaps most disturbing, Terrans regularly consume substances that cause them pain. Their food contains chemicals called capsaicin, and that activate pain receptors in the mouth. They drink beverages containing ethanol, a mild poison that damages their internal organs. They do this for enjoyment. The council chamber was silent. "I do not understand," said a council member. "Why would any species intentionally cause itself pain?" "Because Terrans have developed a unique relationship with suffering," Doctor answered. "Pain, to most species, is a warning signal. It tells the body to stop, to avoid danger, to protect itself. But Terrans evolved in an environment where stopping meant death. The predator would catch you. The cold would freeze you. The starvation would kill you." She displayed more data about human physiology. So Terrans evolved to process pain differently. They do not ignore it. They feel everything we feel, perhaps more intensely. But instead of treating pain as a stop signal, they treat it as information. Just data to be considered, not a command to be obeyed. The display showed a comparison chart. On one side were the pain tolerance levels of various coalition species. On the other side was a single bar extending far beyond the chart's boundaries. "This is why Cadet did not signal his limit during the test," Doctor concluded. "He was told it was a pain tolerance test. He believed he was supposed to tolerate the pain, so he did." Commander Ross stepped forward. "I have called this meeting because I believe we need to reconsider our understanding of the Terran species." He pulled up military records on the display. "We dismissed humans as weak because they are slower than, less strong than, and less durable than. But we were measuring the wrong things." The display showed footage from the Endurance March. The council watched as continued walking long after his body should have failed. They watched as his persistence inspired his teammates to keep going. "Terrans are not strong in the traditional sense," Commander Ra said. "They are something more dangerous. They are relentless." He showed more data about human history. On there, Terrans developed a hunting technique called persistence hunting. They would track prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal simply collapsed from exhaustion. The Terrans were not faster or stronger than their prey. They just never stopped. The council members exchanged worried glances. "I have reviewed Cadet's performance at the academy," Commander Ra continued. "He has finished last in almost every physical test. His scores are the lowest in academy history, but he has never quit, never asked for accommodation, never made excuses." He pulled up the unit's overall statistics. More importantly, his presence has improved his entire unit's performance. Training Unit Sigma 12 now has the highest completion rate of any unit in the current class. Not because the other members are exceptional, but because they refuse to quit while the human is still going. The council member spoke up. "Are you suggesting we change our assessment of the Terran species based on one individual?" "I am suggesting we have made a terrible mistake in underestimating them," Commander Ra replied. "And I am grateful we made this mistake now. while Terrans are our allies rather than later when they might be our enemies. The council debated for several hours. Some members believed Commander Ra was overreacting. Others thought he was not reacting strongly enough. In the end, they reached a decision. Cadet would be transferred to the Special Operations Candidacy track. The Academy would begin gathering more data on Terran physiology and psychology, and a recommendation would be sent to the Coalition leadership. Keep the Terrans happy. After the meeting, Commander Ra returned to his office. He found waiting outside. "You wanted to see me, Commander," the human asked with his usual polite bow. "Yes, Cadet, please sit down." Sat in the chair across from the commander's desk. His body still showed signs of the pain test, dark circles under his eyes, a slight tremor in his hands, but his expression was calm and pleasant. "I am transferring you to the Special Operations track," Commander Ra said. His eyebrows rose. "Special Operations, but Commander, I have the lowest physical scores in the Academy. I am not qualified." "That is what I thought as well. I was wrong." The commander leaned forward, his compound eyes studying the human. "Tell me something, Cadet. During the pain threshold test, why did you not signal for it to stop?" Considered the question carefully. "You said it was a pain tolerance test," he replied. "I thought I was supposed to tolerate the pain. Was that incorrect?" "Most cadets understand that they should signal their limit. The test measures where that limit is." Ah nodded slowly. "I see. I apologize for the confusion. In Korean culture, we have a concept called, it means, reading the situation, understanding what is expected without being told directly. I think my failed me in this case." Commander Ra clicked his mandibles. "You misunderstood the test, so you simply endured." "Yes," smiled slightly. "My grandmother always said that when you are not sure what to do, the safest choice is to keep going forward. I was not sure when to stop, so I did not stop." The commander stared at him for a long moment. "Cadet, I have trained soldiers from 47 different species. I have seen warriors who could tear through metal with their claws, soldiers who could survive in the vacuum of space, commanders who could calculate battle strategies in milliseconds. But I have never met anyone quite like you." Looked confused. "I am not special, Commander. I am just a person who does not know how to give up. My grandmother never taught me that skill." Commander Ra made a note in his file. It said, "The Terran does not understand why he is exceptional. This may be the most dangerous thing about him." That night returned to his quarters to find, and waiting for him. "We heard about your transfer," said. "Special Operations, that is the elite track." "Yes," replied. "I was surprised too." "You deserve it," said quietly. It was the first kind thing she had ever said to him. "After the pain test. We all saw what you did. I could not have done that. None of us could." His crystalline body chimed softly. "You have taught us something, Terran. Before you joined our unit, I believed that strength was about power, speed, and durability. You have shown us that true strength is something else entirely." Sat down on his bed, looking at his teammates with genuine warmth. "I did not teach you anything," he said. "I just walked. You walked too. We all finished together. That is what matters." Shook his head. "No, human, you walked first. You walked when every part of you should have stopped. And because you walked, we could not stop. Do you understand? You carried us without even touching us." Thought about that for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Well," he said, "I suppose that is what teammates are for." 6 months later, the graduation ceremony took place in the Grand Assembly Hall of Station Helix 7. It was the largest room on the station, capable of holding 10,000 beings. Every seat was filled. Billions more watched through holographic broadcasts across the galaxy. The ceremony was always a grand event. Cadets who had survived the Academy's brutal training would finally receive their commissions. They would become soldiers of the Galactic Coalition, defenders of peace across 1,000 worlds. This year, the ceremony was special. Training Unit Sigma 12 had achieved something unprecedented. All 4 members had graduated. In 300 years of Academy history, no training unit had ever achieved a 100% graduation rate. The average was around 27%. Most units lost at least 2 members before the end. But Sigma 12 had done it, all 4 of them. Stood at attention in his dress uniform, his dark green scales polished until they shone. He had grown during his time at the Academy, not just in size but in wisdom. The arrogant who had dismissed the human on the first day was gone. In his place stood a warrior who understood that strength took many forms. Stood beside him, her 4 arms clasped behind her back. She had entered the Academy believing she was the best. She had learned that being the best was not enough. You had to inspire others to be their best too. Stood perfectly still, his crystalline body catching the light and creating rainbows across the hall. He had nearly shattered during the endurance march, but he had survived, and the cracks that remained told the story of his journey. And then there was. The human stood at the end of the line, looking slightly uncomfortable in his formal uniform. He still looked unremarkable, still looked like someone who might get lost in a crowd, but every eye in the hall kept returning to him. The rumors had spread throughout the galaxy. The Terran who broke the pain threshold machine, the human who walked for 40 hours on bleeding feet, the soft creature from a death world who refused to quit. Commander Ra stepped forward to address the assembly. Today we honor the graduating class of the Galactic Military Academy, he announced, his voice amplified throughout the hall. These cadets have proven themselves worthy of serving the Coalition. They have endured trials that break most beings. They have pushed past limits that others believed were absolute. He paused, his compound eyes sweeping across the audience. But before we begin the formal ceremony, I wish to speak about one unit in particular, Training Unit Sigma 12. The holographic display activated, showing footage from the unit's 2 years at the Academy, their struggles, their failures, their triumphs. When this unit was formed, I gave them a 30% chance of graduating even 1 member, Commander Ra continued. They included a with anger issues, a who could not work with others, a who believed he was already perfect, and a Terran who finished last in every physical test. Quiet laughter rippled through the audience. I was wrong about all of them. The display changed to show the unit's final statistics: highest completion rate, best teamwork scores, most improved individual performances. Each member of this unit exceeded my expectations, but I wish to speak specifically about their Terran member cadet. Shifted uncomfortably as thousands of eyes turned toward him. When Cadet arrived, I thought he would wash out within the first cycle. He was slower, weaker, and less durable than any cadet I had ever trained. By every metric we use to measure soldiers, he should have failed. Commander Ra stepped closer to the unit. But Cadet taught us something that we had forgotten. He taught us that the most important quality in a soldier is not speed or strength or durability. It is something else entirely. He looked directly at. It is the refusal to quit. The assembly hall was silent. When Cadet walked on bleeding feet for 40 hours, his teammates watched. And because they watched, they could not stop. When Cadet endured pain levels that should have been impossible, his teammates were inspired. When Cadet kept failing and kept trying, his teammates learned that failure was not the end. Commander Ra addressed the entire assembly now. This is the legacy of the Terran species, not their technology, not their military power, not their physical abilities. Their legacy is something simpler and more powerful. They do not give up, ever, and anyone who walks beside them will find themselves unable to give up either. He turned back to the unit. Training Unit Sigma 12, step forward to receive your commissions. One by one, they received their assignments. Was assigned to planetary defense forces. where his strength and combat abilities would be most valuable. Was assigned to special assault teams, where her warrior heritage and 4 arms would give her an advantage. Was assigned to exploration units, where his ability to survive in extreme environments would allow the Coalition to reach new worlds. And was awarded the Iron Threshold Commendation, the Academy's highest honor. He became the first Terran to be assigned to the Vanguard Corps, the Coalition's most elite military unit. After the ceremony, the 4 teammates gathered in the mess hall one last time. They had shared this table for 2 years. After tomorrow, they would scatter across the galaxy, probably never to see each other again. "I still do not understand how you did it," said, looking at with something like wonder. "The pain test, the march, everything. How did you not break?" Sipped his drink, thinking about the question. "My grandmother used to tell me a story," he finally said, "about a mountain." The others listened. On this mountain there was a temple. Anyone who reached the temple would find peace, but the path was covered in sharp rocks. Every step hurt. Most people who started the climb gave up before they reached the top. He smiled, remembering his grandmother's voice. One day a young man started climbing. He was not strong, he was not fast, but he kept climbing. When his feet bled, he wrapped them and kept going. When he was hungry, he ate wild berries and kept going. When he was tired, he slept on the rocks and then got up and kept going. "Did he reach the temple?" asked. "Yes, it took him many years. His body was broken. His hands were, he had lost everything except his will to continue." Paused. When he reached the temple, the monks asked him why he had come. He said, "Because the mountain was there, and I was there, and the temple was at the top. What other choice was there but to climb?" Shook her head. "That is a very human story." "Perhaps," agreed, "but I think it is a story for everyone. The mountain is different for each person. The rocks are different. The temple is different, but the choice is always the same. Do you keep climbing or do you go back down?" Raised his glass. "To the mountain." "To the mountain," the others echoed. They drank together one last time. Years passed. The legend of Training Unit Sigma 12 grew. Stories were told about the human who could not be broken, who finished last but never stopped, who inspired warriors from across the galaxy simply by refusing to quit. The Academy began accepting more Terran cadets. Each one was watched carefully. Each one was tested. And each one, in their own way, proved that the first human was not an exception. He was an example. One day, a new class of cadets arrived at Station Helix 7. The transport ship dropped out of hyperspace, and fresh faces pressed against the observation windows, looking at the legendary training facility. Among them was a young Korean woman named Park. She had her grandmother's smile and her father's stubbornness. She carried a small bag with some clothes, a few books, and a photograph of that she kept in her pocket. He was her older cousin. He had inspired her to apply to the Academy. Commander Ra, older now but still sharp, reviewed her file. Unremarkable physical scores, pleasant demeanor, no obvious exceptional qualities. He smiled, a rare expression for an. "Send her to the pain threshold examination first," he ordered his staff. "I want the other cadets to see what they are dealing with." In the observation gallery, the new cadets gathered to watch. Among them was a young who reminded of someone had told her about. There was also and species from a dozen different worlds. They all watched as the small human female settled into the neural chair. Doctor, still conducting examinations after all these years, attached the sensors and activated the machine. Level 1. Nothing. Level 5. Smiled. Level 7. She took a slow breath. Level 10. The maximum. The same level that had broken, impressed, and amazed all those years ago. His face tightened. Her hands gripped the armrests. Sweat formed on her forehead. But she did not signal her limit. Instead, she looked up at the observation window. She found the eyes of the trembling cadet who was watching with disbelief. And she winked. "Is this the hard part?" she asked calmly. In the observation gallery, the cadet turned to his teammate. "What are the Terrans?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The had no answer, but in the back of her mind, she was already preparing herself. If this human could endure that kind of pain with a smile, then she would have to push herself harder than she ever had before. She would not be shown up by a Terran. None of them would be. And that, of course, was exactly the point. Far across the galaxy, in a quiet corner of a coalition military base, Commander received a notification on his data pad, a message from the Academy. His cousin had arrived. Her first test results were in. He read the report and smiled. "The mountain," he said softly, looking at the photograph of his grandmother that he still kept in his pocket. "She is climbing the mountain." He put the data pad away and returned to his work. There were missions to plan, soldiers to lead, and a galaxy to protect. But in his heart, he knew that the most important work was not happening on battlefields or in war rooms. It was happening in the Academy, where young beings from across the galaxy were learning a simple truth that humans had always known. The mountain does not care if you are in pain. The rocks do not care if you cry. Only you can decide if the temple is worth the journey. And if you decide it is worth it, then you keep climbing. Forever. Until there is no more climbing to do.